Good evening, and thank you for being with us tonight. We are excited to host this important conversation focused on the state of education in LA Unified, also referred to as LAUSD. I'm Cedric Nelms, community organizer with Innovate Public Schools and lead for Innovate Schools Black Parent Network. I specifically work with parents across Los Angeles County. Innovate Public Schools is a nonprofit organization dedicated to building the capacity of parents and families to organize, advocate, and demand high-quality schools for their children. We believe that the education system was not designed to serve all children, and that the biggest barrier to all children having access to an excellent school is the lack of political will to improve the system. We believe the voices and experiences of parents, families, and students should be elevated and centered in decisions about education. LA Unified is the second largest school district in the nation, responsible for educating nearly 500,000 students in 1,300 school campuses. There are also 110,000 students whose parents have chosen to send their children to charter schools which fall under the jurisdiction of LAUSD. Of the top three largest school districts in the U.S., LA Unified is the only one with an elected board of education, also referred to as the school board. The school board has three primary functions. Number one, approve policy. Number two, approve an annual operating budget of $10 billion. And number three, hire, evaluate, and if necessary, fire the superintendent. This makes the school board vital within our community to ensure the educational success of all students. There are many voices that the school board listens to when it makes decisions. This forum is organized by community-based organizations and groups that serve students, families, and educators in some of LAUSD's most vulnerable communities. In fact, much of the progress that LAUSD has made in the last 25 years is largely due to the activism of community members calling on more resources, tailored services, and access to a quality public education for students from our communities. Our goal tonight is to hear from each candidate, to learn about their plan to support our schools, and to evaluate the voices of parents, students, and community members to ensure our newly elected school board members prioritizes our needs. Before we get this show started, we want to acknowledge and thank the organizations who planned this event. Tonight is the last of three in this series of forums. We are especially grateful to the lead partners, Alliance for a Better Community, better known as ABC, Communities in Schools of Los Angeles, CIS, LA, and my team at Innovate Public Schools, IPS. Our gratitude also to the planning committee members who worked extremely hard to make these forums possible. Community Coalition, Diversity and Leadership Institute, Education Leaders of Color, Inner City Struggle, LA Coalition for Excellent Public Schools, Parent Institute for Quality Education, and Partnership for Los Angeles Schools. Now, it is my sincere honor to welcome tonight's moderator, LaQuisha Bryant. LaQuisha Bryant is the mother of two beautiful girls. Her and her girls live in the city of Compton. She is a member of the Black Los Angeles Young Democrats and an Innovate Parent leader for the Black Parent Network. LaQuisha Bryant is not only a fierce advocate for South Los Angeles communities, but she is also a parent who, like many of you, cares deeply about ensuring a quality public education is accessible to all. LaQuisha, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Cedric. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I have the honor and pleasure of being your moderator for tonight's forum. My name is LaQuisha Bryant, and I'm especially happy to be here with all of you today. Thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. It is a true testament to your dedication and investment in our public education system. Before we begin, I will share some housekeeping rules to ensure that the candidates are clear about how this forum will flow. Tonight's questions have been prepared by the event organizers, parents, and students. Additional questions may be submitted by the audience in writing through the chat function during the forum. Those questions will be sorted and reviewed to ensure relevancy and to prevent partisanship or repetition. We will get to as many audience questions as time allows. The candidates will have 2 minutes each to introduce themselves, and they will go in alphabetical order by last name. Candidates will provide closing statements later in the program. We will go in the reverse order for that round. So the candidate who introduces themselves last will go first during the closing. For the questions portion of our form, I will sort the order to keep this form interesting. Candidates will be given equal time to respond to questions, which will be 2 minutes. A timer will indicate when the time is up. The timer will start as soon as candidates are called upon. This includes any clarifying questions the candidates may have. Our goal is to give every candidate the same amount of time and opportunity to answer the questions. A note to the candidates and audience members that personal attacks are not permitted. Please let me repeat that. I will not allow any personal attacks, and you will receive a warning if you break this rule. If any candidate chooses to disregard this rule, we may turn off your mic and your camera, and we may ask you to stick to the issues. For audience members, we ask that you be respectful of all candidates. Personal attacks will not be tolerated. If these rules are not respected, you may be removed from the Zoom. These questions have not been shared with any candidates before this forum. We have both candidates running for Board District 7 with us this evening, one that has joined us now, and we will have the other one joining us at 7 p.m. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and for sharing your vision of LA Unified with our audience. One last request for candidates. Please slow down your delivery to enable our interpreters to properly translate your message. Before I hand it over to the candidates to introduce themselves, I want to pause and have folks in our virtual room answer a quick question. The question will appear on your screen. We know we have many parents, students, educators, CBOs, and community members in the room, and we welcome you all. Let's see who exactly is in the room so that we can give candidates a better idea of our audience this evening. Please be sure to select all the options that apply to you. Okay, thank you for your feedback. And it's waiting for the results to populate. Just a few more seconds for those of you who are still answering. Okay, and here is who is in the room. We have 32% parents. We have 5% educators, 58% community-based organizations, 37% community members. Thank you all for your feedback. Now, let's meet the candidates. We have a lot we want to talk about. Okay. We will begin with you, Mrs. Lydia Gutierrez.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you.
Oh, great. And I love the salsa music. I was dancing. I was going for it. And thank you for the kindness of the invitation. I know it took a lot of preparation and so forth, and it did not allow me to click on educator. I kept trying, so that 5% would increase a little bit more. So anyway, let me give you a little quick introduction of who I am. I'm a 30-year veteran teacher. I have 7 years experience in administration. I was my first year of teaching, my father passed away, and to help my family out, I left education and went into aerospace. So I started as an assistant to administrator to cost estimating supervisor of the Bradley tank for Hughes Aircraft in my 20s. So that's what gave me the administrative background. I have 2 master's degrees. I'm a master teacher for UCLA Mathematics Project. I'm also a writing fellow. So if you go to my website, lydiaforeducation.com, you'll find this big old long list of educational experiences that I have had. And one of the main reasons I am here challenging my opponent is because I do not like the direction LAUSD is headed. The academic scores have dropped. Our African American children still need to be addressed. And the curriculum of putting gender qualifications on children, I believe, is inappropriate. So I'm asking you to go to my website and you'll find out a lot of more information of who I am. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Now we will begin our question and answer portion.
Oh, great.
Okay. So for question 1, our topic is contract procurement for community-based organizations. This school year, critical services were abruptly interrupted by LAUSD's procurement process. 40,000 students.
I do have a hearing problem. That's why I'm wearing the headset. So if I may need clarification on some of the words you're saying, and I missed a word. So if you could just repeat it.
Sure. This school year, critical services were abruptly interrupted by LAUSD's procurement process. 40,000 students went weeks without academic services, social emotional support, after school programs, and more. Changes to the procurement rules confuse school principals and community groups that deliver these services during and after school. Agencies that specialize in delivering services lost funding from LAUSD, resulting from the district's decision to change procurement rules. How would you ensure that the community organizations are treated as true partners by LAUSD, that contracts are protected, and that the services are not interrupted for students and families in future years? You will have 2 minutes to answer the question.
Well, I have to go back to my aerospace experience in procurement and so forth. First of all, I'm assuming this was under the superintendent and the board decision to follow through with his direction. This is something that should have been discussed way before the school year started. This should have been laid out, planned, and making sure all services would have been met when the day 1 of school. That's how I would have addressed it. That I would have not, if it was presented to me when I was on the board, I would have said, "Halt, we have to make sure all the needs are met before it's even addressed and voted on." That's something I did when I was in aerospace.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gutierrez. Now I'd like to transition us to talk about digital equity. Virtual learning left a lot to be desired, and return to school efforts have been disruptive. It also elevated the crude reality that too many households in Los Angeles lack access to quality, affordable, high-speed internet. How will you ensure that LAUSD provides permanent solutions to end digital discrimination and increase resources for digital equity in the region? You will have 2 minutes to answer.
Hey, I'm sorry. I was taking my socks off. Those are little personal touches when you're in your own home. Okay. When we're talking about digital services, we have to talk about, telephone services and so forth. This would be a negotiable contract that I would have to, we would have to put forward. We would have to also look into legislation because to help out financially, because this is a financial burden if we were to lay it on LAUSD's doorstep. We do want services because when we were on closed down, I had to teach online myself. So I understand what that meant. And the children, if they didn't have a line service, they weren't going to be taught that day. So it is precious, but to address on meeting the needs would be going through legislation. I would go through legislation. I would go through the telephone services and set up contracts. It's everything's negotiable. It would be something we can negotiate.
Thank you for your thoughtful response. Question 3, with the topic of English learner students. About 48% of students in LAUSD fall under the category of ever English learners, meaning that they have either been classified as English learners or students with emerging biliteracy skills. Spanish continues to be the predominant non-English language spoken by English language learners in LAUSD. Additionally, it's important to note that while the overall high school graduation rate in LAUSD stands at 87.4%, the graduation rate for English learners is notably lower at 65.3%. Additionally, only 52.1% of English learners meets the requirements for UC or CSU admission, compared to the 65.2% of all graduating students. Each year, California welcomes 150 to 200,000 newcomer students. Newcomers are students who have recently arrived in the U.S. schools and often have highly limited English skills. Given that English learners are one of the fastest growing student populations, how do you plan on effectively meeting the linguistic needs of students and their families? You will have 2 minutes to answer.
Well, I do have my master's in multicultural bilingual education and a teaching credential. And I've taught all 30 years in the inner city. So most of my kids are ELL students. So I understand completely the situation. So what happens is if you're not aware of it, my first year of teaching, I taught for LAUSD, and then I went into aerospace. But I presently teach for Long Beach Unified, and we address this issue with open arms. And what we do is we have a pull-out program. We targeted those kids with low academic ability, languaging being a difficulty, that we bring them in and we have tutoring after school. We have, like I said, a pull-out program during the day. And then also what we do is we meet with the parents. We have training sessions for the parents, how to reach out and talk with their kids. Because when you have a parent that's not able to understand fully what is happening, you have to have a translator to help them to coordinate with the issues of what's happening at their school, so the child is engaged.
You have given us a lot to think about. Our next question will focus on students' access to college. College rates for Black and Latino or Latina, Indigenous, and other students of color continue to remain low despite efforts to bridge this gap. In the 22-23 school year, only 53% of graduating students completed the A through G requirements for UCs and CSUs. And less than a third of LAUSD graduates completed a 2-year or 4-year college degree. How will you implement, expand, and leverage existing programs such as dual enrollment to ensure that students not only enter higher education, but also obtain their degrees?
Well, the thing is that I myself, when I was, I didn't have a desire to go to college, but I had a counselor that saw my academic scores and said, "You're going to college." And she arranged it that I took the classes that I needed. So then I took my first year of junior college, community college, and then went off and got a scholarship to Pepperdine University. So the thing is that we do need high school counselors there helping escort the kids through the process so they know what classes to take. Also, I do believe in partnership with our community colleges so that those kids can take classes while they're still in high school. And that will help build up the bridges. But also the other part, 35% of the jobs require a college degree, while 65% required a trade skill. And that's one thing that has not been growing and developing. I learned how to hammer and saw in second grade. And from there, you know, in middle school, we had metal shop, wood shop, ceramics, you name it. We had hands-on activities. And I believe when a young person has a vision of a future and then starts applying towards it, they can start in middle school, you know, at age 12, 13, 14, and they're starting applying themselves, they will start focusing towards it. I lost two of my nephews, one from a bullet and one from drugs, because they didn't see their future.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Gutierrez. Now we will have questions from an LAUSD student and two parents. First up, we will have Jeremiah Renee, who is a parent leader with Innovate Public Schools. As a reminder, if you require translation, be sure to click the globe or menu button at the bottom of your screen and select your preferred language. Jeremiah, welcome.
Hi there. Hi, Jeremiah.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So I'm trying to bring up my question. Sorry about that. It left. So the question is, as a concerned parent member and advocate for educational equity, I believe that it is crucial to address the unique challenges faced by Black students, particularly those who endure trauma from domestic violence and have special needs or experience homelessness. These students often rely heavily on the support and resources provided by the school system in light of budget cuts and a shortage in psychiatric social workers. It's essential to consider how families that are struggling can be empowered and supported. So my question to you is, what specific plans and initiatives do you have in mind to ensure that families in need receive the necessary support and empowerment from the school system?
Well, if you're aware of it, that we have a high percentage of African-American children that are in foster care. And when they turn 18, they have nowhere to go. And I would like to see LAUSD consider housing, being a part and joint venture that those young people, and then also geared towards going to a middle school, a college, junior college or something like that, just to have them focus. And as for the African American community, if you're not aware of it, it's been a fight I have had for many years, because what happens is when you have a lot of ELL students, a lot of focus and the money goes towards that, and our African American children fall to the wayside. What I had to do within my own school district is I fought with the teachers for them to come together, African American teachers to come together to meet with the families and to meet with the parents, separate from the Hispanic parents, because their needs are completely different. What we need to do is we have to continue with the achievement plans that we have focus that is geared towards monitoring them. My school district, we've been doing it for 3 years now, that I have to show accountability of their academic growth. I have to show how I'm monitoring them. I have to show the methods I am using in building up their stamina. There's more that I want to say, but my time's up. Sorry.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Jeremiah, for that question. Up next, we have our student leader, Lanaya Joseph. Welcome, Lanaya.
Hi.
Hi, Lanaya.
Before I ask you my two questions, I'm going to introduce my topic and a little bit about myself. As you may know by now, my name is Lanaya Joseph. I'm a junior at Jordan High School in Board District 7. I'm also a part of Community Schools of Los Angeles, known as CIS-LA, a nonprofit organization supporting students like me, and 15 LAUSD schools with one-on-one academic support and community resources. I have been a student of CIS-LA since 10th grade. Equity and achievement gaps of LAUSD are worse for Black students than any other racial student groups. Community groups successfully pushed the district to invest in Black students and family at the height of racial reckoning in the country, with Black Lives Matter leading the charge, with LAUSD investing over $125 million. Now, I have my two questions for you. I'm going to start with my first question. And my first question to you is, as a board member, what would you do to increase transparency and monitor progress for BSAP?
Okay, I didn't hear the last 2 or 3 words. Can you repeat it, please?
Okay. The question part, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, I'm gonna just repeat the whole question for you. As a board member, what would you do to increase transparency and monitor progress for BSAP?
When you say BSET, what is that? I'm sorry.
Is like for the Black community, like students that go to my school.
Okay, so repeat the question one last time so I can get the whole flavor of it out. Sorry.
As a board member, what would you do to increase transparency and monitor progress for BSAP?
All right, okay. As I explained to you already, what my district is doing, Long Beach Unified, is that we have to show accountability. We meet 3 times a year with our principal, and we have to show the progress we have made. We have to show how we're meeting each child's need in for our African-American children. And I believe if we take it a hands-on approach in that direction, would be very beneficial. Because if we show that our children are decreasing, we have to then show what steps are we taking. We have a pull-out program where those children are taken and tutored directly, personally. And then also the teachers are to take, like for myself, I have African-American children in my classroom. I make an effort of calling the parents and telling them exactly the positives and what has happened within the day. So if we're making every teacher accountable, I think those issues would be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. My second question for you is, how are you willing to work with the community to protect BSAP investment, strengthen implementations of the program, and ensure it's having an impact on Black students' learning and Black family engagement?
Well, the thing is that just like I explained to you, that at my school, I got the African-American teachers to come together and to meet directly with the parents, African-American parents, because like I said, Hispanic needs of parents are different than the African-American needs. And also, I believe that, you know, besides the teacher engagement is to have that parental engagement and to have build up those relationships. As you talked about, counselors are a very important role. And we also had a, I forgot what the name of the person was a community person that would actually make house visits. Because you got to remember, all the years I've taught, I've dealt with homeless children. I've dealt with children that have been abused, and yeah, I've dealt with a lot. And so those children need to be serviced. If you're not aware of it, I went to church to Church in God in Christ and Compton, servicing. What happened was, when I was running for office, I went to one church, I introduced myself. They didn't have a Sunday school teacher. So I said, I'll be your Sunday school teacher. So I was there for 10 years, working with my children. And the sad part was that from 5 years old up to 6th grade, one of my students had just, finished 6th grade and was walking home and was shot dead right there in the street, leaving church, got 3 bullets in his chest, just because he didn't move away from the street. So I understand the situation for your community. I do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Those were excellent questions, Lanaya. Thank you. Let's see.
You guys, can you excuse me for a moment?
Sure, no problem.
Thank you for that time.
No, thank you. At this time, we will take our second question from a parent. This question will be asked by Angelica Nava, a parent from Bethune Middle School.
Nice to meet you. Buenas tardes.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Angélica Nava y yo soy madre de una estudiante de la Betún Middle School. Mi pregunta es, ¿qué planes tienen para mejorar la seguridad dentro y fuera de las escuelas?
So what are the challenges of them coming in and leaving? You know, from entrance from kindergarten all the way to high school? Is that what I'm assuming? Can someone?
What plans do you have to better security inside and outside of schools?
Oh, okay. I didn't hear the word security that. Okay, for security. One thing that concerned me with this school board presently is that they defunded the police department by $25 million. 133 police officers lost their jobs. Within that year, there were 41 major, actually, there was 133, well, I apologize, 108 assaults, while 16 children required hospitalization. They found 44 weapons recovered, including 5 handguns and 32 knives within that 1 year when they defunded the police. So I believe that we do need a police department. We do need security. Within my own school, while I was teaching 2nd grade, a homeless person hopped over the fence while I was teaching PE. And so that was a dangerous situation. We quickly had to get my kids back in the classroom. But I mean, we have to safeguard our children from the beginning to the end. And we do need the police force there. So I'm fully supportive of keeping LAUSD Police Department fully funded.
Thank you. Gracias,
Gracias.
Angelica. Okay, now we have time for questions submitted from the audience. Please use the question and answer function on Zoom to submit your questions now. Our team will sort through them to ask a few that rise to the top. While folks submit those, we will ask our candidate one additional question. Please give me just a moment, please, Ms. Gutierrez, for the additional question. Okay. The topic for this question will be family and community engagement. Earlier, it was mentioned that much of the progress that LAUSD has made in the last 25 years is largely due to the activism of parents and community members calling on more resources, tailored services, and access to a quality public education for students from our communities. If elected, how will you work with community groups like ours? And how do you plan on authentically engaging parents as partners?
Well, first of all, I would strongly suggest we change the time we meet. The school board meets. It meets during the day where parents are working. It is meeting in only one location, which is the hardest place to get to with traffic. And it's a very expensive way to get there if you drive your car, you know, paying for the car rental to be in a park space. What I'd like to see is District 7 has meetings during the evening within its area, and it travels. I mean, I go from San Pedro all the way to the tip of 47th Street along the 110 freeway. Now that can be easily broken up into 3 areas where that I could have a monthly meeting within in a location in the evening where parents can come and address their issues and their needs, because that's very important to me, to hear from the parents, to hear from the students, to understand what is happening in the classroom for them, for their child. Because my objective is to create the most educational experience for their child, to get them to have a productive life for themselves. Now, I don't see that happening, and that this is something I've been pushing for a very long time, but I would like to see coffee meetings and so forth. I think that's one way we could address meeting with the parents. And as for the community organizations, that also it's very simple to do too, is that I would be visiting them, wanting to get to know them, knowing how they service the community and our children. Sorry for my time
Thank
taken.
you, Ms. Gutierrez. Not a problem. Our next question, the topic is priority of funds. We know that a one-size-fits-all I'm sorry. Forgive me. We know that a one-size-fits-all approach to remedy the needs and concerns of students does not work. This approach has had an inequitable impact on highest need schools in LAUSD. How do you plan to prioritize equity and equitable funds, such as I think this is SENI, is that to protect highest need schools? I do apologize. If I need to correct that later, I will. But did you understand the question?
Okay, I'm going to read it. I think it's written in print for me.
Okay.
There's no such thing as a one fits all in any school or any classroom. My goodness, you can't, it doesn't work that way. So in reality, you have to look at the situation. You have to, there's, you have even the building structure. Every building structure, there may be piping, there may be, broken water faucets and so forth. Every school has to be analyzed by structure, by their team of teachers, by the administrators, and what is the makeup of the students and their ability level. I have a very, in my classroom, I put for the highest possible academic scores possible, and I shoot for the gate. I tell them that you're all intelligent, you're all bright, and you're all going to make it. So I start pushing that from day one. But in reality, they all are at different levels, and we have to meet those needs. And so it's very easily to evaluate to see where they're at, and that's where the funding will be going towards, where the academic needs are and what the structural needs are, and what the administrative needs are to meet the needs of academic scores to improve for their success.
Thank you so much for all your thoughtful responses to our audience questions. Our next question is a mesh from a few questions that were raised. We know that advancing district decisions requires working with other members of the board, some of whom you may not always align with politically. How would you work with other board members to focus on the areas you're talking about today?
Well, first of all, when you have the documentation that proves exactly what you're saying, it's kind of hard to refute it. You know what I mean? Because you kind of look like a fool. That's number one. Number two is to meet with your family, your parents, your organizations, and you all are in agreement. This is the documentation. This is what we need to fight for. And you present it. And when you go to the next, the next district seat, and you just start talking to those groups of people so that we're all on the same page, because you have to fight for what you need for your children. I mean, it just goes without saying. Any parent will fight for their academic success of their child, and I'll be there with them. I'll stand in the picket line. I've done it all before. I don't have any problem fighting for those children's rights and making sure they get the academic success that they need, financially and in academic scores.
Thank you to our students, parents, and audience members for the questions. Our next question is, the topic will be on the satisfaction with the superintendent. Thank you all for the awesome questions and engagement. We can feel the energy even in this virtual room. We have time for one final question, and we'd like to talk about your satisfaction with Superintendent Carvalho. The school board has three main jobs. 1, set district policy. 2, approve LAUSD's $10 billion annual operating budget. And 3, to hire, evaluate, and if necessary, fire the superintendent. Our current superintendent, Alberto Carvalho, has been serving LAUSD as superintendent for the past 2 years. How would you grade the superintendent's performance A through F? How would you work with the superintendent to improve his performance?
Well, first of all, I read his bio. I was very impressed with it. He has a vast amount of experience. He's, with a large district, which is important. And, obviously they hired him because he was qualified. That's number two. Number three, I think you have to give him 5 years. You have to give him 5 years. It's just like if you put a teacher in, their first year teaching, it takes a while for them to get the hang of things. And LAUSD is a complex, multi-level adventure. I call it an adventure. So you have to give him time. What makes me unique from my other board members is that I have the 30-year plus experience in education. I have the educational background and the experience. And so I can see, and then with my financial background, spreadsheets and so forth, I understand where the money goes. And so I'm able to make things accountable and to observe what is happening. I think he's doing his best job he can. And I think things are progressing. The school board in the past has picked people that didn't have as much educational experience as he's had. So I think we need to continue to give him an opportunity and then continue to support him. And if he's off base, I'll be the first one to pull the red flag and approach him on it. But the thing is that I'm not going to be blind. I'm going to be sitting there and talking about my district. I'm going to be having him sit down and explain the numbers. And I want to know exactly where they are academically. I want to know about my African American. I want to know about my Hispanic, my Asian. I want to know every single aspect. I want to know what the curriculum is, because I know how. Let me tell you, I have background in curriculum, so I know what's high quality and what's fluff. And I'll hit hard. I says, what are you doing? What is the training? I want to know about the training.
Very
Sorry.
much, Ms. Gutierrez. We appreciate
that.
your thoughtful answers. Not a problem, not a problem. So we are going to transition this portion of our forum. We thank you so much, Ms. Gutierrez, for answering our questions. We would like to welcome Ms. Tanya Ortiz Franklin, and we will join back with Ms. Gutierrez at the end for our closing remarks. Before we begin, Ms. Ortiz Franklin, I am going to share some housekeeping rules with you just to ensure that you are clear of the flow of the forum, okay? Tonight's questions have been prepared by event organizers, parents, and students. Additional questions may be submitted by the audience in writing through the chat function during the presentation. Those questions will be sorted and reviewed to show efficiency and to prevent partisanship or repetition. We will get to as many audience questions as time allows. You will be provided 2 minutes to introduce yourself. Since you are introducing yourself last, you will have the opportunity to speak first in the closing remarks. We will give each candidate equal time to respond to questions, which will be 1 minute and 30 seconds. A timer will indicate when your time is up. The timer will start as soon as you are called upon. This includes any clarifying questions you may have. Our goal is to give every candidate the same amount of time and opportunity to answer questions. We do want to note that candidates or audience members shall not make personal attacks. I will not allow for personal attacks to be made. If you do not respect these rules, we may turn off your camera and your mic. And the same is for audience members. We may remove them from the Zoom. Thank you so much for being here with us. Please take the next 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for taking some time this evening to get to know the candidates for Board District 7. I'm Tanya Ortiz Franklin. I was an LAUSD student, which is a big part of my story. I went to President Avenue Elementary School, Fleming Middle School, and Narbonne High School, go Gauchos. But I graduated in 2001 alongside less than half of my incoming freshman class. And I knew that wasn't fair. I knew that wasn't just. I knew that wasn't what was happening in wealthier, whiter neighborhoods across the country. And that was affirmed for me when I went to college at Columbia University in New York City, which I loved, and got to meet kids who grew up all over the world. But in particular, it struck me the kids who went to private boarding schools and had a path for college. It wasn't just if they were going to college, but it was which college they were going to, because they had so many options and they had so much preparation to get there. So I knew from a young age that I wanted to come back to LA Unified and make it a great place for every student to be able to choose college if that's what they wanted. And that's what I did after college. I joined Teach for America and taught middle school at Stephen White in Carson, also Board District 7, for 5 years. I got laid off in the Great Recession, and we are having to consider some big budget conversations. I hope that will come up tonight, that were, in my mind, not fair to kids and not fair to the staff who take care of our kids. So I went to law school at UCLA, and I studied public interest and critical race to think about how I could impact a larger system that would really center the communities that have historically been pushed to the margins by so many institutions of power, not just public education, but employment and immigration and public benefits, healthcare, all the things. After law school, I worked for a nonprofit organization, Partnership for LA Schools. Thank you for being one of the many co-hosts, focused on restorative justice and teacher development, on pushing LAUSD to adopt better practices and be equitable in its approaches. And I've been privileged to serve for the last 3 years. I'm looking forward to sharing more with you all about what I've done and what we're looking forward to doing next.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ortiz-Franklin. I will begin with our first question, and the topic will be contract procurement for community-based organizations. This school year, critical services were abruptly interrupted by LAUSD's procurement process. 40,000 students went weeks without academic services, social emotional support, after-school programs, and more. Changes to the procurement rules confuse school principals and community groups that deliver these services during and after school. Agencies that specialize in delivering services lost funding from LAUSD, resulting from the district decision to change procurement rules. How would you ensure that community organizations are treated as true partners by LAUSD, that contracts are protected, and that services are not interrupted for students and families in future years? You have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer.
Thanks for the question. And I know it's close to heart for the hosts of this call. And I know that because I spoke with many of you during the time that this was impacting your services to students. So, after lots of conversation with the superintendent and team, I understand the transition was well intended. There were some bad practices that we needed to clean up. And we have a new chief procurement officer who was trying to bring things above board and be more transparent. But the impact and the timing and the communication was poorly done. And I apologized personally to many groups that I spoke with. And I asked the superintendent to make sure we are ready for next school year such that this never, ever happens again to our kids and families. I think that the way that we continue to make sure services are maintained is by staying in communication. And so having relationships with you all and with our school site leaders who are the ones going through this process with you to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our kids. And we know we have to do that with partners. It does take a village to raise our children. I hope to maintain those relationships and that open line of communication. One of the big things the board does every meeting that a lot of people don't have the chance to dig into is approve contracts. It's often on the consent calendar, and Ms. Goldberg describes kind of what we're doing. But I would invite you to look at that with me and share concerns that you all might have, to make sure that I'm asking my questions during board meetings, but also in briefings ahead of time, so that we're getting things done well in advance of the start of the school year.
Thank you, Mrs. Ortiz-Franklin. Our next question will be on the topic of digital equity and the digital divide. Virtual learning left a lot to be desired, and return to school efforts have been disruptive. It also elevated the crude reality that too many households in Los Angeles lack access to quality, affordable, high-speed internet. How will you ensure that LAUSD provides permanent solutions to end digital discrimination and increase resources for digital equity in the region.
Again, I have this group to thank in a lot of ways. One of my first resolutions when I came on board was about this very issue. And as a result of directing the superintendent's team to analyze not just the devices that had gone out during COVID, but the high-speed internet access in our homes, which we can test when kids go on their LAUSD Chromebooks, we found wide disparities. And you can imagine which neighborhoods had the slowest internet. And so what we did was partner. I wish we had a discount, but we purchased directly from AT&T and Spectrum high-speed broadband in the homes of over 100,000 students for the last 2 years. We're able to do that right now because of federal COVID dollars, and in particular, money dedicated to funding this very issue. And this is where we have to advocate at the state and federal levels. I'm a part of California School Board Association, which has been pushing for closing the divide across the state, and has also been participating in some advocacy at the federal level. I want to encourage everyone to vote, not just here, but if you have friends in other states, your elected officials do matter, not just your public school elected officials, but also congressional folks who will be looking at this issue, deciding how much money they'll reimburse us for. So I want to, go in coalition with you all together to DC and to other states to make sure we're prioritizing the kids that most need access to learning outside of school hours as well.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful responses. The topic for our next question will be English learner students. About 48% of students in LAUSD fall under the category of ever English learners, meaning they have either been classified as English learners or are students with emerging biliteracy skills. Spanish continues to be the predominant non-English language spoke by English learners in LAUSD. Additionally, it's important to note that while the overall high school graduate rate in LAUSD stands at 87.4%, the graduation rate for English learners is notably lower at 65.3%. Additionally, only 52.1% of English learners meets the requirements for UC and CSU admission, compared to the 65.2% of all graduating students. Each year, California welcomes approximately 150 to 200,000 newcomer students. Newcomers are students who have recently arrived in United States schools and often have highly limited English skills. Given that English learners are one of the fastest growing student populations, how do you plan on effectively meeting the linguistic needs of students and their families?
It's a big question. It's a really diverse group of students as well. So one is that we track students' readiness to reclassify, and this is most useful in elementary school, even through the middle school grades. But we know when we get to high school, kids need to be enrolled in a traditional English class to earn the A through G credits to be college eligible. So we look at students' literacy abilities, their reading abilities as one element of the reclassification. We look at their grades, and we look at the LPAC exam. And I know schools are looking at all of the profiles of kids from A through H, making sure they understand what kids need to be able to reclassify. Now, that helps with the technical side of things. We know there's a lot of qualitative and holistic side of reclassifying and what it really means to be proficient in English and reading to learn in every other class and writing in English to express your learning in every other class. And so that's where we have to think about every teacher being a literacy teacher, which was a big phrase when I was a classroom teacher, and I'm glad to see that that has really caught on. I would say for our secondary students, particularly high school and our newcomers who are a bit older, we have these centers now. We recently approved additional counselors and support for students and families who are more newly in the country to do the holistic wraparound, particularly because there's so much to navigate on the social emotional side. And so I know we have a strong team who's working on that, but we can definitely stay closer to the individual stories.
Thank you so very much for your response. You have certainly given us a lot to think about. For our next question, we're going to focus on students' access to college. College rates for Black and Latino or Latina, Indigenous, or other students of color continue to remain low despite efforts to bridge this gap. In 2022-2023 school year, only 53% of graduating students completed the A through G requirements for UCs and CSUs. And less than a third of the LAUSD graduates completed a 2-year or 4-year college degree. How will you implement, expand, and leverage existing programs such as dual enrollment to ensure that students not only enter higher education, but also obtain their degree?
It's a great question, and we have an awesome example right here in Board District 7. We have several schools with dual enrollment, but I'll just give a shout out to Harbor Teacher Prep, which is on the campus of Harbor College. And the vast majority of students graduate not only with one AA degree, but often 2, 3, or multiple AA degrees because they're dual enrolled. And we know it's possible because the pandemic has opened up ways that kids can learn during the school day via Zoom with college professors. College professors can come on campus. We can do after school, weekends. And in particular, Harbor College in Board District 7 has a great president, Dr. Dorado, and I have a good relationship. So he's constantly trying to get our kids, more dual enrolled. So I think that's some of it, is elevate the good practices, maintain the relationships, and try to close the gaps at schools where we're not offering as many. Even one of our continuation schools, Eagle Tree at Carson, has a ton of kids involved in dual enrollment. So we can't limit any student. Everyone has the opportunity, or should, to take college courses and feel like a college student so that they'll go through and finish. And I think we have to ask families what the barriers are. If it's about transportation or being on campus late night, we can figure things out, like a van service getting kids home, or if they need a 0 period to free up a class period during the day, let's figure out for each unique student and each individual student what their unique solution would be. That's what I think our staff is starting to do, and I would definitely keep encouraging that.
Thank you. Now we will have questions from LAUSD students and a parent. First up, we have Jeremiah Renee, a parent leader with Innovate Public Schools. As a reminder, if you require translation, be sure to click the globe or menu button at the bottom of your screen and select your preferred language. Welcome, Jeremiah.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Tanya. It's good to see you. My name is Jeremia Renee. I'm the mother of 5, and my oldest is 13. My middle is 11. Jonte
Just
6.
a second, Jeremiah. We cannot hear you. Let's see.
Somebody said they can hear me.
Try it again, Jeremiah. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So, sorry about that. So and my youngest is 4. I'm a parent empowerment advocate at Carroll-Dale Learning Community with my kids. And I'm very, very passionate about BSAP, as you might know. And my question is, as a concerned parent, member, and advocate for educational equity, I believe that it's crucial to address the unique challenges faced by Black students, particularly those who endure trauma from domestic violence, have special needs, or experience homelessness. These students often rely heavily on the support and resources provided by the school system. In light of the budget cuts and a shortage in psychiatric social workers, it's essential to consider how families that are struggling can be empowered and supported. So my question to you, Tanya, is what specific plans and initiatives do you have in mind to ensure that families in need receive the necessary support and empowerment from the school system?
Thanks for the question and your leadership and advocacy, but also your personal connection to this. I think that that's what I hear drives a lot of our families and our community leaders and our advocates, both the planners on this call and other folks who can't be here, is that personal story of what you need for your kids and family. So thanks for taking the time to elevate it. And that's what I think the school system has to do, is pause and realize it's not just about getting the quick fix or, you know, making the quick link. It's understanding the complexities that our students and families are bringing to us, and really sitting down to understand how we can, in some cases, make warm handoffs to our community partners and have better procurement processes so that they can be on campus. For example, mental and physical health services. We know our counselors, both our school site social workers, our academic counselors, and our community partners do a lot in this regard to hear what folks need and connect them to resources, whether it's employment or anything that might come up as a result of personal challenges. You know, what I'd like to continue doing is to make sure that our partners are on campus serving our families, that we have ongoing spaces like parent centers and listening sessions to hear from families about what they need, and ultimately that we keep staffing the folks who have the strongest relationships. And in many cases, I hear our BSAP RJ teachers, our BSAP social workers, counselors are some of the best people to connect with, and we've got to keep them there.
Thank you. And I guess my second question would be, how do you plan to allocate resources effectively to ensure that the needs of these vulnerable students are met despite the budget constraints and shortages of PSWs?
Yeah, when you know, we had a previous superintendent who proposed hiring 900 social workers, and we thought we couldn't get there because there weren't enough people coming out of Masters of Social Work school in our state, and Arizona and New Mexico put all together. We actually do have close to 900 social workers now, but we have 1,300 campuses. So what we need to think about is not just the enrollment numbers, which often drives how we allocate resources, but the needs. And so the Student Equity Needs Index is a big one because it includes community factors like asthma rates and gun violence in the neighborhood. These are indicators we can use in how we allocate resources. And also incoming academic factors like chronic absenteeism, which can often be a sign of a bigger challenge. So for me, I'm a big fan of using the indices we have developed to make sure we're allocating resources to the schools that most need it. You know, 3/5 of my schools are SENI high and highest need. I have a disproportionate number in Board District 7. And so the superintendent and team are constantly hearing from me about how to serve my schools where the needs are greatest, and making sure that schools have flexible resources to be able to get the folks they need on their site. And I would just hope to have an open door to continue hearing from folks about how it's working or not, so that in my biweekly evaluation conversations with the superintendent, we have every other week check-ins. We're prioritizing these kinds of concerns that are deeply impacting our families. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah, for that question. Up next, we have our student leader, Lanaya Joseph. Welcome, Lanaya.
Hi. As she previously stated, my name is Lanaya Joseph. I'm a junior at Jordan High School in Board District 7. I'm also part of Communities in Schools of Los Angeles, known as CIS LA, a nonprofit organization supporting students like me, and 15 LAUSD schools with one-on-one academic support and community resources. I've been a student of CIS LA since 10th grade. Equity and achievement gaps of LAUSD are worse for Black students than any other racial student group. Community groups successfully push the district to invest in Black students and families at the height of racial reckoning in the country, with Black Lives Matter leading the charge, with LAUSD investing over $125 million. I have two questions for you. My first question to you is, as a board member, what would you do to increase transparency and monitor progress for BSAP?
Sorry. Great question. I think we have a lot of visions and ideas and policies that sometimes don't get implemented because there isn't the accountability mechanism. And so that's a big part of my job, is not just passing the policy and directing the superintendent, but following up. And so my office has created a Google Sheet for us to track things like the resolutions we make, the budget amendments we make, which is where the BSAP started as a budget amendment, to make sure that in my check-ins kids with the superintendent, we are prioritizing things that are important to our community. And part of that is working with the staff. So there's a lot of folks at Beaudry and in the regions who are responsible for implementing these kinds of things. And my team has regular meetings with them. I meet with the regional superintendents every 2 weeks. We meet with the Education Transformation Office, which houses BSAP, also regularly. And, I'm hearing great things about the impact reviews, which is a different way of being accountable to the teaching and learning in the classroom with a lens towards Black students in ways that we haven't done before, but I think is really moving the needle on the kinds of feedback that principals are giving to their staff. And so, I'm not on every school campus, obviously, but I know folks who are, and I work closely with those who are coaching and supervising them. And I bring the questions up regularly as it relates to student achievement. Region South is always telling me how our Black students are doing because they know it's important. And that's my role, is to keep bringing it up.
Thank you so much for that response.
My second question for you is, how are you willing to work with the community to protect BSAP investment and strengthen implementations of the program and ensure it's having an impact on Black students' learning and Black family engagement?
So the strategic plan kind of has everything in it, right? It's the kitchen sink of LA Unified, and BSAP is a part of it. We have regular, so far annual updates on how things are going. But I think actually on the family engagement is not quite as strong. We have these family academies that have gotten started. I know there are some schools that are calling for, and some are starting, like an ELAC for BSAP, so a parent advisory group, both at the school site, the regional office, and at headquarters. And I'm very supportive. And I also know that leadership takes people who are available to spend their time doing the work. And so I think we need to remove all barriers. If it's translation, if it's transportation, childcare, food, if it's at an in-person meeting, we need to be able to provide those things so that folks really feel welcome and like their voices matter, and that we're taking care of them because they're taking care of our students in our school. So, I'd love to hear feedback about how things are going at all of those levels, headquarters, region, and school site, and use your feedback to make changes and direct the superintendent and team to adjust their practice to make sure we're meeting your needs.
Thank you.
Thanks for your questions. And go Bulldogs.
Great questions. Now we will have our third question from a parent. This question will be asked by Angelica Nava, a parent from Bethune Middle School.
Buenas noches. Mi nombre es Angélica Nava y yo soy madre de una estudiante de la Bethune Middle School. Mi pregunta es, ¿qué planes tienen para mejorar la seguridad dentro y fuera de las escuelas?
Thanks so much for your question. And I know this issue has come up at a lot of schools, but at Bethune in particular, I remember some conversations we've had. And, safety is our district's #1 priority. And I have chaired the School Safety and Climate Committee this year with a lens toward how do we prevent issues from occurring? And that is a lot of our staffing. So our counselors, our social workers, our restorative justice teachers who are helping to teach kids how to manage their emotions, how to build healthy relationships, how to work through conflict, and help de-escalate when things are, more than what we would expect. But we also know that we need to work with others when there are issues outside of the school. And so this year we've been investing a lot in safe passages. We've been working on pedestrian safety with the city and crossing guards, so that when kids are coming to school, they feel safe from any threats in the neighborhood that we know can exist outside of the school as well. But ultimately, I think, my job as a school board member is to make sure our budget reflects our priorities. And for me, a priority is physical, emotional, and intellectual safety. And that looks like training our staff in culturally responsive teaching, in de-escalating, in identifying emotions, and making sure that kids can express themselves and have a safe space to get their needs met, which is really what behavior is telling us, that they need something from us that we can try to support with.
And gracias, Angelica. Now we will have questions from the audience.
Gracias.
Our first question from the audience is, earlier it was mentioned that much of the progress that LAUSD has made in the last 25 years is largely due to the activism of parents and community members calling on more resources, tailored services, and access to a quality public education for students from our communities. If re-elected, how will you work with community groups like ours? And how do you plan on authentically engaging parents as partners?
Thanks for the question. And I think this is a great opportunity to live out the vision of the strategic plan. So, we have our academic achievement, our joy and wellness, our collaboration and engagement, which includes family empowerment, family engagement, communication, and is constantly an area of feedback that I'm receiving from parents and advocates in my own district. I think because sometimes it feels like it's just on paper, or sometimes it feels like it's just compliance, like you have to have the ELAC meeting to check the box to get the federal dollars. So I think, for me, and what I've been trying to push on the superintendent and the team that focuses on community engagement is, how do we deeply feel and express that we value the voices of our families and our partners, not just on paper, but in our everyday interactions, in our relationships. And some of you all here might have met my teammates. There's one in particular who everyone's saying, oh, I know her, because we want to be connected to the community. And the way that you make improvements is you have authentic relationships where people can just call you and say, I'm having a problem with this. And that's what we will do, is take those calls and follow up with staff to make sure we're solving those problems as quickly as possible. I also meet regularly with folks. I know advocates are constantly reaching out for meetings, and we're happy to take them because we're better for them. And I hope you'll see lots more of that from me.
Thank you. Our next question. We know that a one-size-fits-all approach to remedy the needs and concerns of students does not really work. This approach has had an inequitable impact on the highest need schools in LAUSD. How do you plan to prioritize equity and equitable funds, such as the Student Equity Needs Index, to protect the highest need schools?
This is a particularly relevant question, as you've heard about some potential budget cuts, and really what it is the loss of COVID dollars and our structural deficit because of declining enrollment and some liabilities that we have been unwilling to address, like lifetime benefits for retirees. Not saying we need to get rid of everything, but we need to be willing to talk about it. And SENI right now is safe for next year, but the year after and the year after, that's when we start to see our multi-year projections going in the below zero. And we need to have an honest conversation about where we need to cut and how we should do it. We've never been willing to talk about school closures or consolidations in a way that makes sense for kids and communities. We've never been willing to talk about some of those other post-employment benefits that feel like the third rail in the district. And as a result, we keep doing what we've always done, which tends to privilege some neighborhoods over others. And that's true in public education and so many other institutions. So what I would like to do, but of course it depends on the board majority, and so it's not just Board District 7, it's at least 4, but hopefully all 7 of us, be willing to have these hard conversations about what we must maintain because it aligns with our core values and what we know we need to close opportunity gaps for kids. And we need to be willing to involve our community in helping us make good decisions for all of our kids, but particularly for those that the system most needs to work.
Thank you. We appreciate all your thoughtful responses to the audience's questions. Our next question is a mesh from a few of the questions that were raised. We know that advancing district decisions requires working with other members of the board, some of whom you may not always align with politically. How would you work with other board members to focus on the areas you're talking about here today?
Absolutely. The power of the school board is not in a school board member. It is in the power of the board and the board majority. I would encourage you all to check out the LA Times or Daily News endorsements of me, because they mention just that I have been willing to work with those across the aisle, so to speak. And I've even learned a ton from folks that might be perceived to be as on the opposite side of really contentious issues. And I think that's what we have to do as board members, is respect one another, recognize that we represent different districts. For example, Board District 3 has very few SENI high and highest needs schools, and they have a board member who has just as much power as I have with the most SENI high and highest needs schools. And so it's about having those conversations about what's good for the entire school district and really what's good for the future of this country. Because with 500,000 kids coming to us every year, we have the power to change America if we can use our dollars in the right way. And I think recognizing the good intentions of my colleagues goes a long way. Working on resolutions with folks who, we don't always agree with can build that good rapport. And also we have briefings that are not to the public, but they're in groups of 3 to not violate the Brown Act. And it's been interesting doing those across kind of ideology lines to just understand each other a little better. So I think there are some structural things we can do, and there are a lot of relationship things we can do to partner and really leverage the power of the board.
Thank you so very much. And we want to say thank you to the students, parents, and audience members for the questions. Okay, we have one final question we'd like to ask you, and it's the topic is going to be about your satisfaction with Superintendent Carvalho. The school board has 3 main jobs: 1, to set district policies; 2, approve the $10 billion annual operating budget; and 3, to hire, evaluate, and if necessary, fire the superintendent. Our current superintendent, Alberto Carvalho, has been serving LAUSD as superintendent for the past 2 years. How would you grade his performance using A through F? And how would you work with him to improve his performance?
Well, we discussed this in closed session, so I feel like I sort of have a pass that I can't say out loud exactly. And I will say, though, what I work with him on. So, I got to hire him, which I was proud to do, and it was a unanimous decision because he comes from education. He was a teacher and a principal and had a track record of improving student achievement, which is what we had not been focused on for a while, in my opinion, when I came to the board. And I was so glad that he took on the board goals of early literacy, mathematics, college readiness, and social emotional learning. And he built a 100-day plan, a strategic plan focused on what the board had directed him to do. And that's going in the right direction. I will say I have shared with him and also publicly some areas of growth for a lot of us is our labor relations. It was not great that we had a strike and we lost learning days. And it is crucial that we work with labor partners to make things happen for kids. And I think our communication with families is often one way. We need to open the dialogue 2-way and really be receptive to feedback and seek it out in ways that actually impact us and make change because of the voices of our families. So there are a few things that I've shared, with him and publicly that I think we can focus on moving forward. But number one, we have to stay focused on student achievement. We've seen some slight gains in college eligibility, but not far enough yet, and definitely not far enough in math and literacy. So that's the big goal.
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Ortiz Franklin. We will now conclude our question and answer portion, and we will move into our closing remarks. As a reminder, each candidate will have 2 minutes to provide closing remarks. We will begin with Tanya Ortiz Franklin.
Well, I just want to thank you all so much for spending your evening learning more about the candidates for this race, and encourage you all to get folks out there to vote because your votes matter. I've been so privileged to serve in the district where I myself was a kid and a teacher and am now a mom. So my daughter will hopefully attend when she's older. She's only 1.5 now. And I know this is personal to us, right? This is home. And like I said, we have the power to change the world if we can get things right in LA Unified. I believe we're going in the right direction. I believe my leadership has put more of an emphasis on student achievement, on equity and justice, and on collaboration to really make the best decisions for each unique student, each unique school community. And I would absolutely be honored to earn your support. I have been able to earn a bit more labor endorsements this go around. Last time as a first-time candidate, it's so hard to get your voice out there and to raise the money and to knock on the doors, but I had so many volunteers. I was so grateful to win in 2020. And this time I think I'm seeing support across the aisle, so to speak, and from a diverse array of folks, both with the volunteering and with the fundraising. And so I hope that will pay off and that people will see that I have been contributing to the district in good ways, particularly around the digital divide, around mastery learning and grading, around school safety and restorative practices, and ultimately about making the system work for the communities that most need it to work. Because we know historically, public education has told which kids could go to college or which kids needed to pursue a particular career path. And today's generation is all about choice, right? And the school system needs to prepare them to make those choices by giving them a robust, holistic education in math and literacy and science, but also in the arts and career technical education. And I think we're going in that direction. Thank you all so much for your time tonight. And if you're interested in supporting, I have opportunities for volunteering coming up this weekend. Thanks.
Thank you so very much. And Miss Lydia Gutierrez.
Can you go ahead and start me at 2 again? I'm sorry. It's good to see you, Tanya. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in 4 years. Besides sitting you on the board. But anyway, it's just been a real privilege to run for office and to be a part of this. I've walked the streets, I've met the people, I've listened to the stories, and people are still not satisfied. I hear some wonderful things are happening, but what's the difference between me and my opponent is I have experience. I have 30 years teaching experience. I have administrative experience. Like I said, I've been head of a division within the cost estimating of the Bradley Tank and Aerospace. So I understand the requirements, the procurement, and so forth. But what I am concerned about is that the indoctrination. If you haven't heard that they have a queer all school year, which is not, I believe is ridiculous. There's no need for that. Like I said, I've been teaching for 30 years and parents want to hear academic success. They don't want to hear about indoctrination. I have another part where they have adopted the radical gender theory curriculum, introducing teachers to work towards the breakdown of the gender binary, male and female, to experiment with gender pronouns such as they, thee, and she. What is that about? That has nothing to do with education. The difference is I believe that I come with the experience, and when I get on board, there's no hiccup. I understand exactly the policies that are put forth. I can continue with those excellent policies if they are excellent, but I will not support indoctrination of any of our students. And I support teachers of faith that don't agree with that. I don't agree with have children being taken off campus to have an abortion. That's what is happening right now. There's a lot of issues that you're not aware of. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all so much for joining us tonight for this very important discussion. We are deeply appreciative to our candidates who made it out this evening. And as you've heard, LAUSD is responsible for serving 420,000 students, the majority of whom are children needing extra resources, support, and a loving learning environment. There's a lot of weight on the shoulders of LAUSD's leadership, from the superintendent and the board, down to school principals and school staff, to work with the community and implement the best solutions possible. We know that the job is not easy, but we ask that if elected, you open the door to community partners, parents, caregivers, and students when making funding and policy decisions. To our audience, please remember to vote. You should have received your mail-in ballot. You may return those ASAP by dropping them off dropping off the completed ballot at any ballot drop box. Please remember, they must be postmarked by 8 p.m. on election night, which is Tuesday, March 5th, 2024. There are also 400 or more convenient and secure ballot drop box locations open and available to voters throughout the county. You may also vote at the nearest LA County voting center near you. You may find those online on the LA County Registrar's page at lavote.gov. Thank you all for spending your evening with us. I will now pass it to Dalia Velasco from ABC for some final words.
Wow. What an incredible evening. In place of Dahlia, I stepped in to just kind of close us out tonight. But what an incredible evening, and a huge shout out to the phenomenal LaQuisha Bryant. Your seamless navigation through tonight's discussion has been nothing short of remarkable. Consider yourself showered with virtual flowers because you've earned every petal. I also want to give a massive thank you to each and every one of you who joined us. Your presence has added so much energy to this forum, and we're genuinely grateful for your participation. And finally, candidates, your candor and thoughtful responses have been very helpful and insightful. We hope that everyone tuning in is leaving with lots of new insights. Virtual high fives all around. And a friendly reminder, if you happen to miss the first and second forum of this awesome series that we put together, Board District 1 and 5, no worries. Head over to YouTube, catch up on.
I took a shower before coming.
Catch up on what BD1 and BD5 candidates had to say. It's a gold mine of perspectives and ideas. The link will be in the chat. Thank you for being a part of this incredible journey with us. Your enthusiasm fuels our passion for fostering these vital discussions. Good night, everyone, and we can't wait to see you again in the future, and let's keep the momentum going. Be well, everyone.
Woohoo! Good night.